Gators Breakdown episode 92 is ready to go. Wow, what a game. Feleipe Franks finds Tyrie Cleveland, 63-yard touchdown as time expires, and Florida beats Tennessee 26-20. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And joining me tonight is Bill Sykes. You can find Bill on Twitter at Real B Sykes. That's Sikes. Bill, man, I tell you what, I was in that stadium. It was, I've seen some crazy moments, and the caught block with Jarvis Moss and blocking that, and 2 years ago, Greer to Callaway against Tennessee. But I tell you what, it was going hard to match. A bomb, a Hail Mary, whatever you want to call it, on the last play of the game that is caught for a touchdown to be the big-time rival.
Yeah, and it feels a little bit like deja vu, man. One of the things I was going to talk about later is how similar this was to 2015. And it was just as good.
Yeah, and it was almost kind of flip-flopped in a way. It was almost Tennessee kind of coming back and almost pulling it out. But, good for, those last couple of offensive drives. The offense finally found the groove a little bit, and Gators found a way to win this game. So, you can probably tell my voice is a little strained here. So, hollering in the swamp for that game. That's what you're going to get right here. So, remember, you can find all your Gators Breakdown episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Search on those sites or get the links by following Gators Breakdown on Twitter and Facebook by searching Gators Breakdown. Also, when on iTunes, please rate and review the show. Let Gator Nation know what they're getting with Gators Breakdown. Bill, it was kind of fun and frustrating all in one game.
Frustrating first, then fun.
Oh man, it's you and I were talking back and forth. We were texting. Surprisingly, I had cell phone signal in the stadium, and we were sitting here talking about each other about when to tweet the how many quarter streak it has been for Florida not scoring on offense, and in the end, it didn't matter. The offense was clutch. It came alive in the fourth quarter. It looks like there was finally some trust in Feleipe Franks. I think it's apparent who the playmakers are on offense now. There were some adjustments made from the Michigan game, talking about play calling and just in general of just getting something going, and mainly it was getting the ball out of Frank's hands. Not many passes down the field, not many reads off of his first receiver, but I think it was enough to get Franks comfortable, not have him running for his life a lot of this game. It was to get the ball in the wide receivers' hands and let them make some plays. Florida will still struggle a bit on offense this season, but at least right now there is enough to know and enough there to start knowing who needs the ball in their hands. And I think that was one big takeaway I took from this Tennessee game yesterday is we saw Malik Davis, albeit the fumble. We already know he is at the running back position, the biggest weapon they have. Kadarius Toney finally got some touches. We saw what he could do with the ball with his hands. Just mainly those two guys, but taking it with what they were letting Franks do, what they were comfortable in letting him do, and finding a couple playmakers, maybe it's something they can build off of.
Yeah, listen, we're going to have some positives tonight. We're going to have some negatives, but, there's a saying is that a win is a win is a win. And I got to say is that that's true, but when it's a win over Tennessee, it's more than that. Yeah. So you don't ever look at these and take them for granted because they're sweet every time, especially after all the smack they've talked and peeing on the statues and vandalizing and
living, and we had to live with 38-28 for the last year. So.
Yeah, generally being the wildlings that they are, But now they're going back beyond the wall, and all is well. But sending them home packing as usual. But yeah, man, listen, there's like you said, there was some frustration, but there was also some good positive steps. And we'll kind of start with that. The game plan definitely changed, and like you said, they got the ball out of Franks' hands out of necessity. They've got some problems up front. He's a freshman quarterback, and listen, he looked like it at times. The guy is not dropping back and reading through 3, 4, 5 progressions and, running the complex plays I think he will eventually will in Mac's system. For now, it's make 1 or 2 reads and get the ball out of your hand before you get sacked or make a dumb decision. And there was mixed results, but he got it done. I think he looks very promising. They're going to have to address some other things. I like you said, I was very happy to see Tony and Davis step up. That's something we've kind of been clamoring for a while now, and they got it, and they sparked. It was like a bolt of lightning, and if not for a fumble, this game might not have been as close as it was.
I'm glad you went there because there was a national narrative out there a lot. Oh, the best team didn't win. Well, I mean, for the first quarter and a half, Florida kind of dominated and controlled the game, albeit only up 6-3. But time of possession, stats wise, especially in the first half, you're going into halftime, Florida was pretty much dominating this game. Had to settle for some field goals early, and the narrative seems to be since. Because Tennessee had a great fourth quarter that that they were the team that deserved to win. Florida didn't deserve to win this game. Oh, well. I mean, I thought Florida, it was, probably the first game and a half, Florida did what they needed to do. The last game half of the game, Tennessee did what they needed to do. But except at the very last play of the game. So, I'm glad you brought that up with that because that seems to be a prevailing thought that Tennessee deserved to win this game.
Look, and anytime people talk about, oh, Tennessee should have won that game, I'm going to say, well, why don't you turn your head and look who's on the sideline? I mean, I'm being serious, man, because at any moment they are prone to let this happen. And, I do think that they established a little better rhythm on offense, and you could tell what they wanted to do. They got something going with their game plan better than Florida did. But at the same time, I think Florida started off more I think they started off a little better, like you said. I think Florida is more opportunistic and big play prone on their defense. They're certainly not as deep on their defense, even though they're better. On offense, they did what they set out to do. And I think that now they've maybe realized that they need to be a big play offense because they're not going to be able to drive the ball down people's throats. Sure, maybe you could say that in the fourth quarter, because of the ebb and flow of the game, Tennessee should have been in a position to win, but they didn't. Florida shot themselves in the foot early on with penalties. They turned the ball over too. So it's not like Tennessee came out there and dictated the pace of the game the whole time and should have been way ahead. I mean, hey, go recruit a kicker. Yeah. Don't call a drop back pass on 1st and goal from the 1. That's how you lose ball games. McElwain got it done.
Yeah, and look at two big, like you said, the mistakes Florida made. The two biggest runs of the game for Florida resulted in fumbles. I mean, P. Ryan had a big run. He fumbled. Davis, big run and fumbled. And Davis if he goes in the end zone, it's 20-3 in the fourth quarter. And Tennessee's having to pass the ball. They probably won't get Kelly involved as much as they wanted to because they're down 20-3.
That's a different game at that point because I think Florida's probably at their best when they know you're going to pass and they can tee off the edge with their defensive ends. So I don't have any patience for that.
No, I don't either. So we'll move on. We'll look at a little bit of quick stats here for the Gators. That's what we kind of do on this Sunday kind of reaction show. Feleipe Franks, 18-28, 212 yards. 7.6 average. We want to see that go up a little bit, but as we said, this was kind of in the game plan to get the ball out of Frank's hands. The only pass that traveled over 10 yards in the air was the last play of the game. So, it was a controlled game plan for Feleipe Franks. He had the one interception that kind of let Tennessee back in it. But going to the rushing yards, Malik Davis, 4 carries, 94 yards, 23.5 yards, but he did have the fumble going into the end zone. Michael P. Ryan, 11 carries, 55 yards. Mark Thompson, 7 carries, 30 yards. Tony had the one Wildcat, I believe, so I want to see more of that. That would be nice to see. Going to the receiving yards, Tyrie Cleveland, 5 receptions, 93 yards. Of course, the one touchdown at the very end of the game. Brandon Powell, 3 yards, 40 receptions, the other touchdown of the game. Kadarius Toney, finally, 4 receptions, 40 yards, and some electric playmaking there. We know he needs the ball a little bit more. And Josh Hammond with 3 receptions for 22 yards. Moral Stevens, Mark Thompson, Deontay Lewis, all with 1 reception there. Moving to the Tennessee side right quick. Quentin Dormady, 21-39, 259 yards, only averaged 6.6 yards a pass here. 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Pretty much a good difference in that game for the Gators there. Where Tennessee killed Florida, rushing yards. John Kelly, the guy I told you to watch out for, he definitely made Florida get punished in the second half. 19 carries, 141 yards, 7.4 yard average, 1 touchdown, and a long of 38 yards. Ty Chandler, the electric freshman there, not too much from the Tennessee side there, 7 carries, 30 yards. That's about all you really need to know there. They had a total of 183 rushing yards on 33 carries. So, Florida's got to get that rushing defense shored up. Here we go. Florida didn't let Marquez Callaway go crazy. He was about the only receiver that could kill Florida right here. 3 receptions, 46 yards after what he did against Georgia Tech in the opening game of the season. You'll take that. It was John Kelly out of the backfield a lot of the times that really killed Florida. 6 receptions, 96 yards, 16 yards average there for his catches and a long of 52. So, it was Ethan Wolf with 3, Ty Chandler with 2, some other guys were there, but they had a total of reception yards, 21 reception for 259 yards. So, Bill, you look at the stats there, and of course, really the big takeaway, Malik Davis for Florida, 4 carries, 94 yards, a lot of those on one play, and John Kelly on the Tennessee side, the 19 carries, 141 yards, and a lot of those were breaking tackles on this Florida defense.
Yeah, they were. That's a big problem right now. You're seeing it at kind of all 3 levels of the defense, and I understand it when it's late in the game, and I can kind of give them a pass when they've been on the field the whole time, and you've got freshmen out there. But I don't like to see it early in the game. I don't like to see it at the point of attack. Like I said, it's one thing if you've got a freshman cornerback out there that, kind of is a smaller guy like they've got on the perimeter right now and hasn't had the benefit of the time in the system in the weight training program. But right now, there's just far too many missed tackles, and there's too many big plays being busted open. It's an issue. And this defense, and I'm kind of in the minority on this, but I think the defense has taken a big step back. And I think it's not – I think when people hear that, they say, oh, there's not good players starting. I think there are good players starting. I think they're probably not very consistently good at defensive tackle right now, and I'm still kind of trying to evaluate just from, my untrained – as far as the linebackers are concerned. I really like the young DBs. I'm kind of a little disappointed right now in Gardner's tackling. But they got depth issues there. When their linebackers got tired late in that game, they had nobody. I like Christian Garcia, but that's it. Rashad Jackson really struggled, and they yanked him right back out. They're just a very paper-thin defense. They don't have those monsters right now on the defensive line. The ends they've got are good, but the best ones are young. I really like Ja'Kai Polite.
He's a hustle guy.
He is. I saw some of the clips they posted, and there's a series. If people will go watch the game tape, if you got it DVR'd, there's a series when, and I think it's that same one, right around the 12-minute mark left in the fourth quarter when Tennessee had the ball. He's involved on like 4 or 5 out of 6 plays in a row there, just swarming by himself. So I encourage people to go watch that, and I'll post some clips later as well on that too. But so yeah, there's some youngsters on this team that I really like on defense, but they don't have the top end talent at least matured enough to make a difference right now, and they're really thin. That's going to be a problem later on in the season.
And another thing, to bail them out a little bit, in the first half, they played really well in the first half, and a lot of that was the offense was staying on the field in the first half. Offense couldn't stay on the field the second half, and like you said, this fourth quarter, with the lack of depth they have right now, you could really tell they were worn out. And don't get me wrong, Kelly, it was a worry I had of his to begin with. He was going to break some tackles, but with as worn out as those guys were and the problems they were already having wrapping up him, and then they were also putting fatigue on top of it, it looked 10 times worse than it probably really was if they had some help from the offense. But that's a reoccurring thing that we've seen the last few years with this offense. They didn't do much to help him in the third half or in the third quarter. It seemed like the Tennessee offense was on the field the entire second half, almost until late in the fourth quarter. So that definitely played a part in it. But it was embarrassing at times seeing how they would just fall off of Kelly.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to pile on because I think these guys are going to make improvement. And like I said, I just think they're thin and they are struggling when they get fatigued and stuff. The problem I got it, and kind of like we were talking about earlier today, is that this consistent top 10 defense that's now ranked 100th nationally in total defense, that's 106th in rush defense through 2 games, 78th in pass defense. This was the same problem on the offense that it has been for years. It's not like they're the first defense at Florida in the last decade that's had to deal with an offense that can't stay on the field. So it's indicative of a real problem. However, we're going to see them probably play some offenses that aren't going to hurt them as bad going forward. And also, one thing I wanted to mention, they're tied for 9th in the country in red zone efficiency right now.
Yes, big time.
They've had 7 drives that have entered the red zone of Florida, but only 1 touchdown in those and 3 field goals. That's really good, and that's showing some bend but don't break attitude. We know there's been a turnover or two in the red zone there. I think this is a very young, very athletic defense at its core. I think that even where there's senior or upperclassmen starters, I think you're going to see a youth movement there. And I think they're just going to have some growing pains. And I think they really need another good recruiting class to come in and bolster their ranks. It's just going to take time.
Hey, and we said going into the season, we expected this to be a little bit of fallback, and they would need some help from the offense. Right now, they're not getting it on a consistent basis at all. So, this was, in a way, you could see it coming. If they didn't get help from the offense late in games, this might be what would happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the things I want to ask people to do is they look at this team and they make their evaluations as fans, just to be fair, is to say, okay, what about the big picture? Because we've got to factor in, okay, these things are either succeeding or they're failing, and that's fair. That's the way it is. It is what it is. But let's also factor in, the adversity that this team has been through, not only this season with the suspensions and the hurricane and the canceled games and all these other distractions, but also with Will Greer and the things they took over from Muschamp. Let's look at the big picture and say, okay, sorry about that. Where is this going? What is Muschamp building? I'm sorry, forgive me, McElwain.
You're done.
People are tuning out right now. Anyway, I'm at McElwain because he had to deal with Muschamp. We have to look down the road and say, what are they building to? It doesn't always just take 2 to 3 years. And right now, I think what we see on this defense and this offense and what we need to ask ourselves is, does this become a championship team in 2018 or 19? And I think when we look across the defense and we see Marco Wilson and we see Chris Henderson and we see, I think, Tadarius Slate, and he made a play that I'll talk about later and I'm going to put on Twitter that was huge in that game. When we see players like Feleipe, I think we have to say, you know what? There is a good core here. It just takes improvement. It takes reps. It takes time. And they do need help from that offense.
For sure. Wrap up defense here. Marco Wilson, 7 total tackles. David Reese, 7 tackles as well. Duke Dawson, Jabari Zuniga, Vasson Joseph, all with 6 tackles. C.J. Henderson, Ja'Kai Polite with 5 apiece. Chauncey Gardner, Nick Washington with 4. You probably could have added 5 more each on those guys, but that was not to be the case here. So, but yeah, there we go. So that's pretty much looking at the, a roundabout thing, quickly glancing at Florida, Tennessee yesterday. But Bill, just how big was this win for Jim McElwain? It looked like that Florida was, kind of letting Tennessee back in it, and there was some doubt, going into in the final stages of the fourth quarter because Tennessee had all the momentum. But look, these guys found a way to win, and like I said, they trusted Feleipe Franks late in the game. He had to pass the ball if they wanted to win this game, and he did, and they let him. And I'll look at one incident or one event in this game I'll point to in a second of where, you really could tell they trusted Feleipe Franks when they needed to, when they had to, and he got the job done. But, it really just looked like, finally McElwain, Nussmeier came up with something late in the game. The game was on Feleipe Franks' shoulder. You and I were texting back and forth. This is his game right now. It was the when they went on to score the first touchdown of the season from Franks to Powell. They got a really great kickoff return, but there it went. And they got the ball rolling on offense. How big was it? For it to happen in that way.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. Now, listen, from the negative standpoint of how this could have gone for McElwain, I stand by my sentiments from early on. If he had lost this game, I think his time at Florida was in jeopardy this year because, the wheels could have come off, and the wheels could still come off, and there's still work to be done here. We can't start dropping games to teams that traditionally are doormats for Florida. There's some tough ones out there this year, like Kentucky and Vandy, and Florida should be able to take care of business, and they got to. However, to get that win in front of the laundry list of big-time recruits that they had in this game coming in, to win over a rival, to win after the adversity of the hurricane without your 2 best proven offensive players, to look all this adversity to face, to gut this one out, to do it with the quarterback that we've been waiting to see if he can develop. And even though he's not a finished product, the verdict is still out on him, but there's signs of life here. There's signs of Gator greatness. That was a moment of true Gator greatness. And those moments in the last 7-8 years have been too few and far between. And that sends a shockwave in the locker room, a bolt of confidence to that team and to that quarterback. It tells the recruits, hey, we've got something cooking here. Hey, when these recruits and the fans and even the players, when they get out of here a few months from now, they're not going to remember so much Perrine's fumble. They're not going to remember how Jim McElwain didn't take a timeout. They're going to remember that 63-yard pass from Franks to Tyrie Cleveland and how that stadium erupted and how that felt. That's the kind of thing that has staying power for a program, and it's the kind of thing that can become a tangible building block as he looks to build something in Gainesville.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about that drive here. So the first touchdown of the season. The drive started in great field position because of the taunting penalty after John Kelly scored to make it 13-10 Florida. Tennessee scored a touchdown here. So 8:46 left in the fourth quarter. Tennessee was moved back on the kickoff, and that gave Tyrie Cleveland a chance to return the kick, and he did. 46 yards to the Tennessee 44. So already you're setting up in great field position. The coaches needed to trust Franks here, and they did. He converted a 3rd and 5 with a 9-yard pass to Cleveland on that drive. So already converting a third down, very important. It needed to be done. He got it done. So then 2nd and 10 with 6:10 left, he found Powell for 13 yards. That went down to the Tennessee 17-yard line. And then after a 12-yard Mark Thompson run down to the 5-yard line, the coaches called Frank's number on 1st and goal, and he found Brandon Powell as he came across the formation, had one man to beat, stretched into the end zone to get Florida the first touchdown of the season with 5:13 left in the game and put Florida up 20-10. Franks on that drive was 3 of 4 for 27 yards. Now, don't get me wrong, the stats aren't eye-popping, but here's the thing. The offense needed to score right there. Their back was against the wall. With all that was happening on offense the entire game before that, Franks just thrown an interception on the drive before that. They helped Tennessee get back in the game with a subsequent touchdown after that. So the coaches still trusted Franks to drive this offense down and put a touchdown on the board. So the Gators got what they needed in that scenario, and it was a good play and decision making from Franks and the coaches for trusting him in that scenario. That was a big difference in this game. So all the momentum was on Tennessee's side, and Florida held it at bay with that score. So that was one thing I wanted to see. It wasn't necessarily – this wasn't going to be all about stats for me, especially going into the fourth quarter. There was going to be a time, and we just knew it. When Tennessee started gaining momentum, Franks was going to have to make a play. He was going to have to make a drive. And, yes, they ended up needing another one, but that was the key drive of the game for me, because if that one never happens, you probably don't win this game.
Yeah, and it's the key drive for me because really it was the only drive as far as only true touchdown drive. And that's kind of a, you could kind of take that in different ways, because you could say, well, they hadn't had the fumble, the one before it was a touchdown. And then, of course, they had the touchdown at the end of the game. But that was the only time they actually drove the field for a touchdown, because even the fumble play was a one-play drive. The Hail Mary was a 4-play drive, that was still 63 yards out as of that last play. But, yeah, that was clutch. It was late in the game, 3:23 left to go up by 10. That was when the life started to breathe into – well, I guess the fumble play really was when the life started to breathe into the offense. But, to come back out and answer that after Tennessee's touchdown was huge.
Yeah, and that's the big thing to me was, Franks, he had thrown an interception to pass before that. And, but the coaches, honestly, they didn't really have a choice. They weren't going to just run the ball all the way down, because they hadn't really been able to do it except for the one big play with Davis. So, that was what needed to happen, and it did happen. So that was the one thing, and I'll point to there, that I just really, really thought was huge, and I'm glad to see it. Trust was a big issue for me going in to this game. Just trust your quarterback. You named him a starter for a reason. Let him go out there and prove it, and he did.
I agree, and I'm looking forward to see his growth throughout the year. I'm hoping as they adjust the offense to kind of the newfound reality of where the offensive line is at, that they'll be able to help him out and put him in position to win. They're obviously going to have to adjust to running game, go to more speed looks, and probably spread things out a little more. But I think Franks is going to have an upward trajectory this year. I mean, he may take his lumps. Don't be surprised if the kid comes out and has a 2 or 3 interception game. If he spends some time in the dirt, and maybe fumbles. And I'm not trying to project negativity on him. I'm just saying this is a freshman quarterback playing behind a suspect offensive line, and he's going to have a growing pains season, at least this year, as they do. That's just what happens. But I think the kid is going to improve throughout the year. I think he's going to add some more big moments. I mean, it's going to be hard to top this one, to be honest. I mean, you kind of set the bar high for himself early on, but I would not be surprised at all if he leads this Gator team to some more last-minute Gator victories throughout the year.
Yeah, Bill, you and I were talking today. So before I move on from the offense and go kind of to the key sequence of defense for me, what do you want to see from this offense now? 2 games in, we've seen what they kind of can do. And you and I were talking earlier today, and you brought up some good points of, all right, we've seen what this offense can do now. Now let's cater to the issues that they have, and let's cater to some of the advantages that they have.
Yeah, as much as I liked a couple of the runs by Mark Thompson, I just think that any semblance of a power run blocking scheme is just out the door at this point. They're just not getting push. I think the interior of the offensive line has got problems. They're having problems both from getting push up front and from getting out on the perimeter on some of these screen blocking plays. And I think that's why some of them aren't working. I want to see Malik Davis get more carries. I want to see more quick hitters. I want to see Kadarius Toney in the Wildcat. And that's not because I want Franks off the field, but I think there's upside to be had there. I think maybe put Franks and Toney on the field, like maybe bring him into the backfield and flex Franks out. I think there might be some trickeration to be had there, at least to see how the defense adjusts to it. I liked the quick passing game. And, they started off with more bubble screens in the Michigan game as far as that goes on the perimeter, but now they kind of went more hitches and just quick throws out to the side. I think continue that. And I think let's test and see what Franks can handle as far as reads, more line checks. They've got to be watching these defenses to see how they react because that tape's out there now. So I think you're going to have to put it on him, even though he's a freshman, to be looking for those keys and to check down to a run or check changing to a vertical route on a hot read, whatever it may be.
Yeah, still some downfield passing there. I mean, granted, there was some in the Michigan game, and we saw some downfield passing in that game. There was a lack of it in the Tennessee game, but I think the game plan was just part of that. I think it was just part of the game plan. But maybe getting some tight ends involved more and using the middle of the field a little bit more. But like you said, getting your playmakers involved at receiver, that's exactly what they were trying to do yesterday, and the receivers proved for the most part that they could get it done. So another thing about the running game is these shotgun, slow trotting handoffs. This offensive line cannot block those plays. Like you said, it's not even from the shotgun and it's a handoff. They cannot block these slow developing run plays. When Franks lined up under center and they went north and south right away, that's when they had a little bit more success running the ball. And I've seen that the last couple years, and I don't understand why Florida just doesn't snap it, take the handoff, turn around, hand it off. But it's these slow trotting, slow developing shotgun run plays that just end up going nowhere and time again.
Yeah, and I do want to see continued misdirection to the play that I guess it was a sweep to Malik Davis that went 73 yards. They brought the motion across to the right, and the linebacker's eyes were on, I guess it was the slot that came across. I need to look at it again, and it froze them. And would you freeze those linebackers for a half a second against somebody that's coming across with speed like Davis? That's it. That's all he needed. And, he got a good block on the outside, and that was it. So I'd like to see more of that. I think they need to really incorporate motion quite a bit. And I know McElwain likes to do that kind of thing. So I want to see more of that, but you got to use it too. You got to run those jet sweeps and hand off to the slot or at least incorporate them and, turn it into a route where you're hitting the guy on a full head of steam. It's not going to be, this offense is going to be limited. It really is. It's going to be limited because there's certain things they just can't block. And I'm kind of worried about how that's going to be when defenses understand the limitations of this offense. And it's going to put a lot of pressure on Franks. But I think there are points to be had there. And the fact of the matter is you just discovered 2 electric playmakers in Toney and Davis that need a lot more touches. I think upwards of maybe 8 to 10 a game each. And then you've got Tyrie Cleveland, who's going to be an excellent vertical threat for Franks. And they have, to me, a chemistry that goes beyond that one catch, but it's certainly enhanced even now.
Yeah, I mean, there are things you could point to, but and seeing it yesterday and a little bit in the Michigan game, but there are things there to be made where they can have some success. Now, we're not going to see Oklahoma State's offense.
Right.
We are not going to see it, but there is enough there where they can get a key block. They can not shoot themselves into penalty. I mean, the first drive of the season in both games, first drive of the games in both games this season, they drive and penalties kill the drive. So it's little. Sometimes it is just little things that is just killing this offense.
That's right.
And maybe they can harp on those things, jump on those things, and turn those little things around.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny when you look down at the schedule. Like, there's really not any offenses that really scare you too much. When you look at Florida State without their quarterback, and Georgia's still what they are. We'll see. LSU's obviously having problems, but now suddenly the defensive slate looks pretty good between Vandy and Georgia and FSU and some of these other teams. So, it's going to be a matchup problem at times, but I think Florida's also going to find some success. And I think that, believe it or not, I think Nussmeier did a pretty good job of game planning with his staff there. And I think they adjusted pretty well from the Michigan game. I'm not saying he's, the greatest thing in sliced bread, but I think fans maybe underestimated the talent deficiency we had going on against Michigan and kind of overemphasized the offensive approach there. And I'm not writing them a pass, but I think I liked where they're going. And I want to see another step. I want to see continued improvement, and because we got what we got, and let's see what they can do with it.
Yeah. Obviously, maybe it was a wake-up call across the board. Maybe coaches figure out what they can do and what they can't do, and maybe they'll build on that. So,
hey, one more thing. That said, I don't think McElwain was calling the plays in the fourth quarter. Nobody's told me that anyway. I don't see a whole lot of difference in the play calling in the fourth quarter, other than the sweep they called. They used play action throughout, and they did incorporate some motion and misdirection and stuff like that in little ways. I'd like to see it more. That's it.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of a difference it was for Nuss being in the booth. Like I said, early in the game, they were moving the ball pretty well. Of course, the fourth quarter as well. But I think it's still more about how they prepare and not whether Nuss is in the booth or not. So, okay, another sequence in the game that was key for Florida coming out on top on defense. But besides the C.J. Henderson interception return for a touchdown, was after the Michael Pirine fumble, Tennessee drove all the way down to the 1 yard line with 8:13 left in the third quarter. Duke Dawson came up big time on a few plays in a row. On second down, Dawson dropped the interception, and then Chauncey Gardner was flagged for taunting, and then Tennessee was flagged for a false start. So it was first and goal again. Dormady threw to Dawson's man, and that was an incomplete pass. And then on third and goal, Tennessee tries to throw a slant to Dawson's man. He cuts the slant off and makes the INT at the 1 yard line. So now you can ask yourself, why is Tennessee throwing in that situation in the first place? But give Duke Dawson all the credit in the world for making a big sequence of plays when he needed to. And for whatever reason, Tennessee wanted to test him in that situation. He made the right play every time. You have young DBs all over the field for Florida, but for whatever reason, Tennessee wanted to pass at Duke Dawson.
Yeah, again, look at who they got on their sideline. When they got down to the 1 yard line, I was like, okay, here we go. They're going to just run right at the pile 3 times, and that's a touchdown. I mean, how do you not look across the line and say, wow, Florida's, rebuilding on defense, and they're tired, and they're young, and we've established a good running game against them. What should we do? Let's drop back and pass. I was like, thank you, Butch. Thank you very much. But no, Duke came up huge in that. And that, that's the thing with this defense, man. They're not 2012, 2013 Florida right now on defense. They're good defense from a talent perspective, not statistically right now. They've got tremendous young talent. And hey, you know what? What they make up for in experience and maybe even in technique, they make up for it by flying around and hitting people and running to the football and making plays. And when you hang it out there, they're taking it. That's why they got 5 interceptions, which I think is like 9th in the nation, even though they've played 2 games and everybody else has played 3. Yeah. So and Duke is probably at the center of that from a leadership standpoint. I mean, he's made those plays himself. He's setting that example and setting that pace for those young DBs. And I mean, with the loss of Marcel Harris, I don't know where this defense would be without him.
Yeah. And another thing about him too is, as I noticed at the game, when Florida was in nickel, they actually slid him into nickel and let these young DBs outside on the corners. So we know he played nickel last year, but that's showing me 2 things: is they know Dawson's a playmaker there at nickel, and it also shows me, hey, they trust these guys they trust these young freshmen on the outside now as well.
Yeah, and that's what I call best case scenario for this defense. That is what I didn't even hope for that, because I didn't expect we'd have 2 of these guys ready. I knew we'd probably have one of them, and I think we picked the right one when we said Marco Wilson would come in ready to play, and he certainly has. The guy looks the part right now. He's not on all SEC cornerback, and people are getting carried away saying, oh, he's ready to go. He's not. He's a youngster. The guy's going to take his lumps as much of a pedigree as he has. but he's playing very well. And, on the other side, when they have Henderson out there, Henderson has the physical tools. He's not quite as polished or ready as Marco Wilson, but he's holding his own and he's making plays. I mean, the kid just became the first Florida football player since 1996 to return pick sixes in back-to-back games. The difference is he did it his first 2 college football games. So yes, he got beat for a touchdown in the game. I think he's getting out physical a little bit just because, the guy's right out of high school. He needs a year or 2 in the program to bulk up a little bit, but he has the tools. Both of these guys look like future NFL cornerbacks. And to be able to slide Duke Dawson inside to pair with that, it's just perfect.
Yeah, and some pretty unique stats that were thrown out there about this game. So, Bill, anything else about the game from your side? Yeah,
the one thing, I posed this to you earlier. It almost feels like this is some kind of mystical do-over for Jim McElwain. And I mentioned earlier that you kind of have to look at this in the big picture. And, whether you like Mac or not, you have to admit the guy's had some tough breaks, between games being canceled that hurt his record and the off-the-field stuff that's going on right now and the hurricane and the Will Grier thing. The guy did not get Will Grier pills. I promise you. It's not his fault, and so you flash back to 2015, he beats Tennessee on a 63-yard pass to win the game. Okay. He goes through all this and it feels like the program is floundering. Recruiting suffered because remember at that moment, the recruiting was bubbling. It was starting to boil over and it was about to erupt. The landslide was coming and then Will Grier gets in trouble. The offense tanks and it's in the pot. But now fast forward 2 years, once again, he beats Tennessee on a 63-yard pass to the swamp, and it was the same play call. He says in the press conference, it's the exact same play. And now, once again, recruiting is actually farther advanced now. It's actually starting to pay those dividends and to bear fruit. And you have to wonder, after all that Florida football has been through, is this a do-over? Should we look at this like a year one? Because if we look forward now a year or two, wow, maybe – the future is very, very bright. And maybe this will be the moment that Gator greatness and, returns to a quarterback and all is right with the world.
Yeah. Maybe it's the spark that just kind of reignites Gator Nation in so many ways here. But ESPN, I saw this on the SEC Nation or the SEC Now, whatever it's called. But they did their next level stats. So for Feleipe Franks, at or behind the line of scrimmage stats here, 9 of 11 for 140 yards. From 1 to 10 yards, 8 of 12 for 77 yards. 11 plus yards, 1 of 3, and the 1 being, of course, the 63-yard game-winning touchdown. So, like I said, 9 of 11 from at or behind the line of scrimmage and 8 of 12 for 1 of 10. Or 1 to 10 yards. So, like we said, we knew kind of what the game plan was. It was to get the ball out of his hands, get the ball to the receivers, get the ball out of his hands so the defensive line pressure doesn't get to him. And he reacted in a very good manner there. So, I just want to see some more growth. That's all it is from here now. I think we know he can probably do the basics of this offense. Now, can he advance the offense?
Yeah, I think when you look at Franks, he's obviously got an arm. He's got the frame. I think he's got pretty good agility. He moves well. And I think as far as his movement is concerned, the thing I like, and I'm going to post a clip on Twitter here in the next few days about that, is how he kind of naturally flows in the pocket and adjusts to pressure and feels the blitz, keeps his eyes downfield. He doesn't just break and run. Some people say he has happy feet. I don't think he does have happy feet. I think he has had to run for his life at times. But I think he's done pretty well at it. You look at the throw he made in the game, it was after things broke down. He's outside the pocket, and that alone makes that throw even more impressive to me. To me, the key for Franks is going to be, can he start to go through those progressions beyond staring receivers down as he's asked to go through 1, 2, 3 reads before he delivers the football, when he has time to do so.
Right. If you want to see happy feet, go watch Quentin Dormady, because that was happy feet.
Right. Yeah. Happy feet is not running when you got 4 300-pounders coming after you. Happy feet is like at the first sign of pressure, you take your eyes off the routes. That's a totally different situation.
Yep. Bill, you won't be on with us tomorrow night, because that's one reason you joined us here on Sunday night for Gators Breakdown. So what, of course, everybody can go out there throughout the week and get your thoughts on Florida coming up this week. But what are you looking for Kentucky? Kentucky got a big win, it's against South Carolina. this past weekend. So that sets up a big game. Florida's first true road game of the season. Feleipe Franks' first true road start of his career. Kentucky's going to be hyped up for a night game in the Commonwealth.
All right, number one, win the ball game. Win the ball game. And I'm not trying to be snarky about that. It's just, listen, you just came off a lot of adversity. You just came off an emotional rivalry game at home with a historic ending. You've got a lot of distraction going on. Good distraction, but distraction nonetheless. This is a classic trap game. You've got a opponent that's typically a doormat that is on the rise. No, they're not a great football team, but they're a football team that is capable of breaking this streak against Florida if they don't show up to play. So win the game. Number two, show me some progress on both sides. I want to see just a little better out of Franks in that offense. I want to see the better at the point of attack, and I want to see the defense better tackling.
I'll tell you another reason why number one is just win the game. Because after this, you come home for a few weeks after this. Get by any way possible of winning this game and then set yourself up for some big home games coming up. So, yes, this is on the road. You go find a way to win this game. The last 2 years ago when Florida went to Kentucky, that's the kind of type of game it was. They went and just found a way to win, and then everything else just kind of fell in place. But that's just kind of what it needs to be happening. I agree with you. We want to see some progress. We need to see some progress. I'll be interested to see how safe the coaches coach it being Frank's first game on the road. I do want to see some progress being made. But getting out of there with a win any way possible is first and foremost with what you have coming up at home after that.
Yeah, and, to a certain level, man, as frustrated as we've been for so long with the offense, we look back at Muschamp. Muschamp was not fired because he couldn't put forth an offense. He was fired because he couldn't win the East and he couldn't beat Georgia.
Yeah. And lost games he shouldn't have lost.
Win the games first. Style points are great, but people have a hard time throwing style points in your face when you're winning. So if McElwain wants to cement his place and his legacy at Florida, just win the games and the rest will take care of itself. And so that's what we as fans should ultimately want. So if they get this win out of Kentucky, I'm not going to be so hard on them, even if I don't want it to be 7-0, but I'll take it.
Yep. Same here. Well, Bill, like you said, it's always good when you beat Tennessee, and in that fashion, it was big time, my friend.
It was. And can I mention the little recruiting blurb we talked about?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, Florida just had a really big visitor list for recruits coming in. They had guys in like Pat Surtain, who's a 5-star cornerback, who a lot of people haven't given Florida a chance in that race. 4-star wide receiver Mark Pope, who's a Miami commitment. 4-star Anthony Schwartz as a wide receiver, maybe the fastest football player in America. You got 4-star offensive lineman William Barnes, Tyreek Johnson from Jackson Trinity Christian, on and on and on. And these kids saw a serious football game and a serious win by the Gators and just had glowing remarks about the atmosphere.
Hey, Bill, before you go on about that, and remember this, Florida State nor Miami had a game.
Yeah, all eyes were on the Gators.
Yes, the focus of Florida was on Florida.
So you not only had everybody tuning in, but these kids that are some of the top targets in the state, they were in the stands. And if I'm not mistaken, they were right down there by that end zone where that ball was caught. Is that right? That's
right. That's the end zone. The recruits were sitting on their benches right there.
And I will encourage you guys, GatorBait.net, the 24/7 Sports Network, Blake and Luke and Thomas, those guys, they have great coverage of what these kids had to say. But I did ask permission to share some of their insider info on one of their interviews. Tyquan Thornton is a wide receiver commit that he's got all the tools. He's committed to Florida, but he had been flirting with Miami. And after he came out of that game, he says, no, I'm not looking at anybody else. I'm locking it down. I'm going to Florida. And they said, well, you went to a Miami game recently. How did that compare? And he said, when asked about the Miami game visit 2 weeks ago, Thornton was blunt in comparing the two visits. He said, it was good, but it wasn't like here. The atmosphere wasn't like this. And, of course, there were probably only 100 people at that game. But that aside, these kids, you could tell there was some electricity there. There was some magic. And this is the kind of thing that cements the sales pitch from these staffs. Yes, you got to hire Jawan Sider. Yes, you got to go out there and chase these kids daily on Twitter and by every means necessary. But at the end of the day, show them some magic, and that's how you get them to commit. And the Florida Gators just did that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You have those big plays that happen right in front of them. I tell you what, I mean, we saw it, basically 2 years ago, the Tennessee game, like you mentioned earlier. It was kind of ugly, but they found some fourth quarter magic, and recruiting was popping just kind of before the season kind of fell apart. So hopefully that's not the case here, and they can keep building on this recruiting situation.
Yep, it's going to be exciting to watch, and with it on the right trajectory, hopefully this team will be as well, and this could still be a very big season.
For sure. So, Bill, anything else you want to throw out there since you're not going to be on the show this week?
No, just keep Joe in check. Don't let him get away with anything unfactual.
Look at that. He and I tailgated at the game yesterday. Had a good bit of fun. So we wish you were there, but
oh yeah,
and I got to meet Will Miles in person for the first time as well too. So
yeah, and I had one of our followers here in Atlanta watch the game with me up here in the SEC capital city at Craven some James. We had a good time and drank a beer, watched the game, and it's good stuff. We're going to have probably a bigger Atlanta get together soon amongst some of the listeners and followers. Looks like.
Yeah, there's a few of them up there, so that would be fun for sure. So. For Bill, you can find Bill on Twitter at RealBSykes. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. As we recapped Florida beating Tennessee 26-20 on a last hurrah from Franks to Cleveland. So thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown, and catch these next episodes later on this week. Thanks.